This is GlobalTalk, bringing the Apple Talk protocol to the internet. And my name is Petar Puskarich, and I've been a community member for a long time. I first got into, say, Apple's in 5th grade, about 1984-ish. But recently I've been doing a lot of work with the Facebook groups, and as well as with the FujiNet project as well. And that's kind of where this got me involved. Doing basically Appletalk network shares and TNFS file sharing with FujiNet, and then trying to make a system that actually works. And then on top of that, one that works with IP connectivity as well. So multiple people across the world can actually play with your devices, look at your files, and also have access to your files and archives that are not just stuck in SIT format or on a CDR image. One of the things I'll show later on here is kind of what advantage that gives for finding things. Okay. So generally, this particular presentation will quickly cover, what is GlobalTalk in general? Where did it actually start out and come from? Why is it kind of important now? And how can you join the GlobalTalk with your own hardware or software? And what do you need to actually run the node itself in order to make it function? And then how do you actually install it? There's been several guides since March of this year on how to do it, and they're all pretty different, and it depends on which hardware you have and which software you have, which version of it is, and what you're actually trying to share. And we'll cover a little bit of that. All right, what is GlobalTalk? GlobalTalk is the moniker given to putting your local Appletalk resources basically on the internet and allowing people to do stuff with them. Whether it's printers, file shares, those are the two primaries. Anything that you can basically use old school Appletalk to share locally in your, it used to be like the classrooms or the university settings, but put it out on the internet. When it gets down to it, it's Apple Internet Router 3 running on a Mac of some sort, whether it's emulation or your physical. But I forgot to put in the slides here too that you do really need 4 megs of RAM on whatever machine you're running, because the routing tables actually do take up a fair amount of memory space. In March, going the middle of March into April timeframe, it was more important because there was like 70 nodes online at once across for the GlobalTalk that we were tracking. But now it's only down to like 25. So people have like dropped off since March into us, and I'll cover that too. It's basically, the software itself is just doing a UDP port 387 tunnel across multiple endpoints that you're defining within the software. It was a technique also used with the Cayman Systems GatorBox series, where you could do tunnel to tunnel across your boxes, but that's basically only across that particular hardware. The Shiva and the Intel boxes for the FastPath 4 and 5 did same thing, but different port, and they did TCP instead of UDP. So nothing was never really interop specified, so it was really hard to actually do anything. When I usually talk about GlobalTalk in general, it's primarily only in the realm of, it's the tunneling part, that's the important part. Because everything else is handled by the normal, your AppleShare servers and your other nodes that are on your network by itself. And it's a great way to find new files on your friends' servers, or a lot of the fun that was happened during the Macintosh event this year for people that participated was we'd basically just drop files on people's hard drives and say, Okay, here's a picture. It's from Ron's computer videos, or it's from a little tag up picture that I did that says, from Petar's place, and has my little logo on it. And people would have designated drop boxes on their hard drives set up just for that. So that was kind of cool. So you have kind of like leaving calling cards, or doing the old the ham radio kind of deal, where you're sending the QX cards. It was fun. This year was the first year that it was broadly started. I ended up with probably like 50 different contacts throwing stuff on one of my shares, and that was kind of fun. But I did make a mistake, and I left 4 of my servers wide open, or at least the Apple Share file servers open, and people just kind of dump things everywhere. So if you're going to set up a GlobalTalk node, make sure you tie down all of your servers to guest access only, and then do a special share for guest that has write access to like one folder, or you'll find stuff everywhere. The risk is that people can delete your files as well, if you leave them in read-write mode. Say now, the stuff I have hosted, it's all, guest only mode, read only. So I turned off all the write stuff. Oh. Okay. All right. Where did it start? The term itself, I think, actually started on a post in Mastodon. I think. Okay, thanks.
I've seen it on Mastodon.
Yeah. And then, because I think I saw a reference to Mastodon. Then I picked up the other information at first at Tinker Different, then Discord. Then I saw the first tutorial on the 68K MLA forums. So it kind of spread really quickly, starting about March 4th, March 5th of this year. And it was part of the online Macintosh project or grouping of YouTubers and other various people that wanted to participate. And basically, it was a project that we could all get behind that was kind of fun. And so, so March and Macintosh, kind of blurred together. The software package itself, I did find version 1 last night when I was preparing some of this. And there was a version of Apple Internet Router 1.01 for 1989. So I was kind of surprised to see it went back that far. The 3.0 version that we're using for GlobalTalk is actually, depending on which version, if you're using 3.0, you just be 92, but 3.01 is 1993 tagged. And it works great. The organization and registration set at first was all handled by Steve at Mac 84. But then he handed it off in mid-April of this year to Ron's computer videos. So he's the new guy handling all the registration. And you have to have registration for this system in order to keep all the Appletalk nodes separate, or else you'll just cause lots and lots of issues. When we get to the demo anyway, hopefully I can show how to avoid that piece, because there is a neat little trick in the hidden options or the advanced options where you can have everything remap on demand, and then really we don't have to have that anymore, which is really slick. All right. Okay, why now? Why is it important? How did it come up there? Primarily, I think it kind of just started as someone was playing around. I want to say, how do we connect all the old Macintoshes? And that's what kind of led to this. And it was part of that Macintosh movement of a bunch of people online. There's been Apple Share IP has been around for forever as well, but that only handles IP packets, and that works great on a different UDP port that you can share. But that limits you to, let's say, systems like around 761 and above, and you can't get like a Mac Plus onto the network and use all the fun stuff. It's an easy way to preserve the resource forks and your data forks at the same time on your OS. When you're dealing with, especially one of my big passions is the Apple II GS side of the house. Everything has a resource fork attached to it, so you can't just store those on flat file systems. Even like NTFS has support for resource forks, but not the way they're used up by Apple. So they basically get truncated and dropped off. So what you end up happening is, whether it's like an icon file will lose its picture. If you have various documents, like AppleWorks GS and stuff, it'll have the data of the actual text in your file, but all the formatting's gone when you store it on the other way. But if you store it on an AppleShare volume, all that stuff's maintained. And that's where this kind of comes in handy. So you can search archives that are on AppleShare servers and actually get the full file as it was meant to be. And you actually don't even have to unsit it. You don't have to un-HQX it when you get it, like if you're downloading from the Internet Archives in different places. You can just pull them in direct. What that also leads to is the fact that you can search on things by name instead of looking for stuff inside the containers. Let's see. Yeah, leeching old software from your favorite computer. Yeah, it doesn't get old. It's always neat to find one of your friends like, oh, wait a minute, where did you find that app? And you just download it and it doesn't matter. And one reason it actually doesn't matter too much is, at least what I've been finding over the last few months, is that no matter what your bandwidth is on your home router, whatever, if you're doing gig symmetric, or even on lower end cable modem kind of links, Appletalk itself seems to have self-limiting on the older protocol, not AppleShare IP, but actual Appletalk as we're doing it, seems to self-limit at about 8 megabit per second max. So you got plenty of bandwidth for sharing outbound. I wish it was faster, and I haven't figured out why it's so slow. But even my system at home, where I ran it on a Quadra 650 with a 100 megabit NuBus Ethernet card in it, just would not pass it. And it was going from a 100 megabit link to a gig link and then finally out of the house. There's no reason it should be that slow, but it just must be the actual processing being held up by the processor in the Quadra 650 is the only thing I can think of. I've even seen the slowness on the emulated Quadra 800s with QEMU. Let's see. Yeah, easy to get on board once you have a few key pieces of knowledge and files. And that was one of the things I'm going to have in the resource slide on the end for this, is the fact that you really only need a few things to do this, but the registration is the most important part. There you go, down. All right. So how do you join this mess? You first need to get the registration access to the registration document on Google Doc in order to register your zone names and your basically your IP, which then becomes your entries into the IP tables for the tunnels. So yeah, Steve at Mac84 passed registration to Ron at Ron's Computer Videos, who's hosting it now. And you have to basically go to that HTTP URL below to get to the current registration page. They did make it easier. Basically, the data you're entering in on the new process goes directly into the registration in the end. So it should help. Once you register and you're approved with your local talk zone and your port numbers, you get access to the Google Doc, which basically gives you access to everybody else's information that they're running, which is extremely important because you will not make connections to other people unless they connect to you first if you don't add them. So it's kind of a mutual kind of protocol in order to build these. Put your information in the official registration data page and then use all the member data. At one point in time, there were 108 entries to type into the stupid router program. It took me a while to do that. And honestly, I've not found an automated way to do it. I'm sure there is with copy and paste. If I go from an older app and text and then copy it in or something. But you'll see in the interface why that's just a pain. All right. So a few things that are needed for a GlobalTalk node. We just covered registration and how to do that. You need the actual software, which is, for the best use, it's Apple Internet Router 301. You can actually use the lower versions 3.0 and 1.1, 1.1.0, I think it was. There's one out there found. And then the really early one I found last night, but I haven't tried it yet. The newer software on the newer Macs, and definitely you'd use 4 megs of RAM for that, for the newer one. Then, in addition to that, you will also need the Apple Internet Router tunnels, or as they're referred to as the IP add-on. That's what actually gives you the ability to join GlobalTalk, is that IP add-on. Let's see, we'll get there. You need some kind of a host of some sort. I've seen Mac Pluses in use. I've seen a 512K, but it really only handled 2 nodes. So it was neat that it worked. A Quadro 650, which is what I started out with using. And it was handling the full load and passing all kinds of traffic all through most of April and most of May. I currently took it down to host my audio digitizer lab for the show. So I only have a QEMU Quadro 800 running at home. But it's still connected to all of my local AFP server. Then I said you'll need the Appletalk resources to share. You can actually use the Apple personal file sharing under the different OS 9.2, 8.1, whatever. As long as it's using the AFP protocol, not the AFP IP side. You can use Apple File Server 2 or 3, which you can get a lot of places, Macintosh Garden repository. Let's see. Yeah, Appletalk capable printers. If you have a native Appletalk printer with the Appletalk port on it, or an image writer, it's like an image writer 2 with the Appletalk card in it, you can just put those directly on your LocalTalk network. Where LocalTalk is what we call the physical layer for the Appletalk to write on. So if you have the old school for that, that'll work. It's shared just fine. Now, granted, if you have that your printer shared out, well, yeah, people can print to them when they want to. Ron at Ron's Computer Videos did, I think, 2 or 3 live streams where we were basically just watching people print to his image writer over and over for like 4 hours, and then had like live conversation on the side. It was kind of fun. People just be printing just random stuff. He really hated mine when I did it because I was experimenting with how to rotate the image I had at the time had a lot of black in it, and it scaled wrong. And basically, he had 4 pages of nothing but black, just eating his ribbon. And he's like, "You might want to fix that," which we did, and then finally had a nice printout. Let's see, yeah. So Mac OS 7.1 to 7.6.1 is the sweet spot for this software to run in. And then Mac TCP 1.1.1 through 2.1. I mentioned 1.1.1 because that is what actually comes with the Macintosh repository version of the Apple Internet Router 301. It works okay. If you use it on a fast machine for networking, so if you have a 100 megabit network card in your machine, or you're using the QEMU Quadro 800 emulation, what will end up happening is, let's say there's a race condition within DNS using 1.1.1, and you'll lose half the nodes just right off the bat because it can't actually resolve them in time. So you have to use Mac TCP, generally that 204, 205, 206, and 201 works just fine. But anything newer than that 1.1.1 will at least get you the rest of the nodes set back to your GlobalTalk network. And then lastly, if you want to accept connections from other GlobalTalk users, you need to have port forwarding set up on your home router or your endpoint. So you need port 387 forwarded into the global internet, or the Apple Internet router machine. If you do not have the forwarding set up, you can make your calls outbound, but you won't accept any new connections from other people in. All right. Okay, so we'll see maybe if this works on the demo side. Yay. Now the trick will be, yeah, that's actually almost usable. Okay. On the right-hand side, I've got a PySCSI-based Appletalk AFP server instance set up that has a couple endpoints on it. Ooh, okay, let me see if I can actually get anything in there. Okay. So I think this one, PySCSI, has A2 server. If that's where I have that listed. Oh, great. No. A2 files, no. Yeah, okay. So the PySCSI-based Appletalk server that I'm rebuilding from the one that's currently out there has support for 2GS network booting over LocalTalk, and you can even do it over GlobalTalk too. That's pretty neat to make work. And also for the 2E workstation cards, it'll network boot those and then provide files to them. It'll also do standard file sharing for your Apple shares, and create those shares on the Raspberry Pi or a Debian 11.9 virtual machine. It correctly handles multiple user logins. So if you come in with user A, user B, and you have, say, separate folder views set up for your different volumes, it'll correctly maintain those as well, which was a trick to get working. But it now works in my version of it, and removed several random crashes along the way. So yeah, I've been working on this for probably about 9 months now, trying to get things actually stable with Appletalk and Linux in general. Worked with several people online, and a lot with the guys on the PySCSI project, which I kind of stole their base load package to make this, but it goes in pretty well. So this has the A2 server there. If I go into there, so this one's got the ADT disk, which is part of A2 server. So if you're running an ADT Pro setup, it'll also have access to those images for AppleShare as well. But the main files for this one are are all through there. So I have the Dropbox, like an Apple II folder section. There's some Mac stuff listed. So a little bit you can share, whatever you want. Let me go back one layer and show you one other thing here. Another thing when setting up the AppleShare servers on Linux is that they rely on this Fuse file system called CIO-PFS, which is the case-insensitive on-purpose file system. And it does exactly what it says. It's a case-insensitive file system running on top of the journaled Linux ext4, which basically prevents you from having, say, a file by the name of lowercase a.txt and a file by the name of uppercase a.txt. In Linux and on the ext file system, those are two separate files. In Apple world, those are one file. So you have to find a way to maintain that when you're ingesting new files and copying new things in. And that's handled by the fuse file system layer in the server. And that's what got that layered in there as well. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is going to scale out at all. But at least what I can show is that, well, if this lets me control. The issue is with QEMU, it passes hard control of the remote mouse into itself, and you have to refree it with another control option. And I'm having an issue with that in TeamViewer today. So, but we can at least see that's the running Apple Internet Router software. And it's currently set up showing the different forwarding ports. In this case, mine that lists up there, Petar's Place, is running on 1000 through 1009. And when you set up GlobalTalk as part of your configuration, you need to pick roughly a port entry that's not in use by someone else to be the base. And they're also usually that 10 ports wide. So it's usually a base up to the 9. So I did 1000 to 1009. Someone actually did pick the 0 through 9, which was kind of cool. But they started GlobalTalk. And you can pick, they're all arbitrary numbers as long as they don't overlap anybody else. But inside the configuration, if you click an option, it will say remap everybody else onto your zone, and you can pick another zone number for it. So I chose the 10,000 series to map into. And that's why all these other ones, so we got, the named fork, 68K Mac Club, that was at Vintage and Foobar, Daniel's lab. He's kind of neat because he has 4 separate entries. And the way he overloads his Appletalk zones is kind of neat because he also runs some gaming ports, and that's how he keeps them all in one block. But these are all sitting here. Now, because I told the router to do that remapping operation of anything it finds, and also any new connections that come into you, down in the bottom where it has this, where does it go? Not the router version mismatch, but the unknown network is 0. And then there was also local net setup conflicts. Normally, if you're running in base mode, there's usually, at least the last week or two, there's 3 people that are obviously not following the recommendations and overlapping somewhere. And then as soon as they log on, those numbers just start skyrocketing over and over as they keep trying to insert into the network. And those insertions happen once every 30 seconds by Appletalk itself. So they think they're doing just fine, but in reality, they're blowing up the rest of the network. So if you use the option that says remap all the ports, it fixes that. And I just figured that out, 3 days ago? So it's like, yay, this actually works. I'm going to see if I can get this to drop in. Okay. Oh, is this going to actually work now? This could be cool. Okay. So let me see if I can hit. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. So let me stop. So this will stop my router at home. Okay. So let me say, go back to File, Open. And pick up. And with Apple Internet Router, you pick up these router documents. And this is where you define all your registration information and everything I told you about before. So in this case, this QEMU virtual machine only has Ethernet as its connectivity. If you're on, actually you could do printer port and modem port, but I don't have the mapping for the virtual side in there, so that wouldn't work for here. But on your real machine, say on your Quadra 650 or a Mac Plus or whatever that has the modem and printer ports normally for local talk, you can actually give those separate node entries into the Appletalk table. I'm going to show you that. So we have printer port, and you say, okay, you can call You can change the port description names. You can set them to active or inactive. Are they seed ports or non-seed ports? The difference between seed and non-seed is that are you the master of that node local to your zone, or are you not? If you're setting this up for the first time at home, you're going to be running in seed mode, so then your other endpoints can find you locally. If you have another Appletalk router or a physical translator like a Cayman Gatorbox or a Asante Easy Print or what it was, yeah, I forget what they're actually called, but Asante makes one. Farallon makes a star router that's similar. And there's a few other different devices that are out there still, but they're all really old. But if you find them, they usually run in seed mode, and then for your other router points, you want to run those in non-seed so they don't conflict. So let's go back. Okay, so in this case, I'll double-click Ethernet. So in this case, I say I'm running in seed mode, and this is where you put it in your network range. I put my 1000 to 1009, and then you pick your name. So, Petar's place. And that's essentially it to defining the Ethernet side of the house. All right, come on. All right. Here's the fun part. So when you get that registration document on Google Docs, and you have that list of 100 servers to enter, basically right now only 25 of them are active, so you can pare it down later. But if you want to add them, if they come back online, you won't know. That's the downside. So in this case, I have Ethernet descriptor, it's active, and then all of these entries are the IP addresses of everybody's nodes. And then you can use host names as well. And what I've also noticed is if you use the older Mac TCP and you only give it IP addresses, then you don't have to worry about losing half the network when that DNS condition happens if you run too fast. So that's one other way around that. All right, so let's go into this one. So here's the options. And here's that remap remote network numbers. And I picked the range that 10,000 to 10,900, which takes everybody in and puts them in the that upper range and reorganizes them. Makes it really nice. You can do some other fun things. This cluster remap networks seems to work really well, but then you get network numbers with like multiple zones, and it just looks bad looking at it visually on the screen. I don't think it affects any of the function, but the one for for Daniel's lab will all show up as like one chunk with somebody else's zone name in it as well. And it's like, okay, I'm not sure how that works, but it seems to. Actually, here, what I can do, let's undo that for now. Say okay. And basically, those are the options you're setting. And once those are set, let's go. Well, oh, okay, so it won't let me okay, there's the new range. Okay. File save. Go in the control, I'm going to say start router. And then it'll complain about the fact that, yes, there's a startup document, and it is the one that we're editing, so that's fine. It'll start by opening up the Ethernet channels. And when it's opening up Ethernet, it's doing the initial binds to Mac TCP. And then as soon as it does that, it'll start walking that entire list and trying to map all the new nodes. And it takes a little bit, but it's not too long. And then once it gets done walking the list, it'll do the verifying the seed or non-seed router commitment state. And usually, if you really messed up something horribly, that last phase is what saves it. And then you basically get a list with nothing in it. There it goes. So there's a seed on the Ethernet side. And we don't have anything on the local type. Okay, so here's that list then. in that non-remap version. So in this case, let me do my network. All right, come on. Oh, let me come up. Yeah, there we go. And sort by the network range. The ones that have a single number in them are LocalTalk single nodes on the local physical networks. And then the ranges are the Ethernet mappings. So since we're not doing the remappings, you can get to see those are the actual choices that those other endpoints used to set up their LocalTalk and their Appletalk networks. So so 3 was what? Yeah. So this one, 388 to 389, 420, and 420. And you can pick a single zone range instead of the 10. The general rule of thumb is that you have about 256 devices per node. And Apple, even back in the day, said, well, if you're going to set up an Ethernet range, make it essentially the 1,000. So I guess that's 2560 nodes you could have on your zone at the time. Yeah. And then once these are up, then you can have the fun that you can go up to here, you can go back into your chooser, and this will be basically forwarded to your entire lab or your local machine or whatever. So you can say, okay, now instead of having a single zone, which case was Petar's place, it's got 28 zones are listed now. So, and I pretty much know that, let's see if Captain's Quarters is up. Yeah. So he said he was going to be online for the talk. We can basically go into him. There's the Apple share. He's got the Captain Quarter file server up. So we're going in there, say guest. And then you can pick. So he has a Raspberry Pi running. Very similar. Actually, he's running the same build as I'm running since he's testing the build for me on his Raspberry Pi. But he has it local at his place. So we'll log into his server. And then he's got the welcome screen that comes on. All right. And then if everything works right, we're now remotely on his server. And then you can download whatever, leech whatever you want. And he doesn't have a printer online. Oh, but do I have any drivers in this? Oh yeah, I did. I added the Appletalk stuff. So if we go to Appletalk image writer, let's see if we can find somebody. A lot of them were taken down within the last month, though, so it's a little hard to find some of them. At least the image writers. You can also print to the virtual laser writers or real laser writers that are on the networks as well. And the virtual laser writers are kind of neat because they ride on a package within the. My PySCSI image supports it, as well as other base images of the A2 server and NetAtalk in general, where they auto bind to your local CUPS printers, no matter what they are. So for a brief period of time, I had my HP Office Jet in our kitchen on the network, and people would print to it in the middle of the night. But the way it works is it's exposed as a proper laser writer printer to the Mac side. So you're not doing anything fancy with a driver or anything. You just print. I'm not finding anything on there. I'm going to switch to the laser writer anyway. There's way more of those. Of course they're not showing up today during the demo. Yeah, here's one. Okay. So what was it? Was it Bob.com? Yeah, Bob.com has one out there. So you could basically set your printer to him and click on setup, and it'll. If you knew what it was, you could do it. But since he's running generic, you can say use generic PPD, and then okay. So yeah, color supported printouts to PDF on his end. So it'll end up as a file on his machine somewhere, on his simulated printer. Let's go and do, change current printer, that's fine. Let's go, okay, Max 68K games. All right. Yeah, 1.3 minutes. So let's just basically take Prince of Persia from them. And then it'll download it over Appletalk. So it's Appletalk tunneled over UDP on IP.
How fast is Appletalk?
It caps out, at least from what I've seen, it caps out at 8 megabit per second. If you're running on, say, the standard 10 megabit Ethernet card through this system, you get about 2.5 megabit per second. It's about sustained. If you're one of the people that are running it on, say, like a Mac Plus, and you're coming in actually over physical local talk and into a router and then out, you're looking at about 163 kilobit per second, which is about just shy of the theoretical for Appletalk in general on the old wire. The port runs, I think, at 250. It's like 258 or something like that kilobit per second. It's slightly faster than that 256 number, just because of how they have to clock it. But the throughput of the actual file system will drop substantially. Now, of course, this one doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have the icon for it either. Let me see here. Let's go. Say view. Yeah, view by icon. Yeah. So I wanted to show how some of the files themselves would actually come in with the logo. That'll take a while. Oh, here we go. Let's just do this. All right. Inside Mac should have some. Of course, they're all set, so that's not going to work. Okay, yeah, so some of this stuff, this must be one of his ingestion points to his BBS as well, so. Yeah, he's got stuff out here. It's a logo. I wonder see what that one is. These are some of his logos he's sent around. But I don't have the viewer installed on this QEMU yet. All right. If it has the custom icons, it will show up in actual life. The other handy thing I can show you, and this is basically kind of like the last piece of this. As long as I can get over there. Okay, so I need to go this way, and then it'll give me access, yes. So back in the chooser, so you can pick as many endpoints as you want, as long as it'll let me come up and down. There we go. Okay, so let's this one. Like the Apple share. So Ron's computer vids. He has stuff. And then he has multiple servers set up underneath it. So let's go into his games folder. So you can have shares mapped all over the world this way, and just see what's around. Yeah, okay, games. All right. Okay. Now it'll let me back. Okay. So in this case, there's one with a custom icon. And this one is not in the I say it's not in the wrapper. It's not encoded with HQX or a SIT file. It actually is the game. So you can essentially, we'll see how big this ends up being if I have enough room in there. We'll pull it down too. And if you're using the QEMU 800 emulation, I have noticed that it is actually faster to send data from that particular emulator than it is to receive it. And I think that's a bug in their emulation with the network layer. That's the only way I can describe it. Because I was testing my own file system going over to the AppleShare server side, I was able to get with it upwards, I was seeing that upwards of like 8 megabit per second. But on the receiving side of the emulator, I was getting maybe 1.5 to 2 at max. So it was kind of bizarre, and I haven't figured that one out yet. All right, so there you go. And there's NS Shaft with the bright icon. Let's see if it'll actually run on this. There you go. Okay, yeah. So there. Still software from your friends. And just, it's launched. You didn't have to unpack it. You didn't have to archive it, unarchive, whatever. It just works. So, yeah. Let's see, pot. Oh. Okay. How about get screen control? All right, but that's basically it for that. Yeah, there are 2 other slides of the deck that actually has all the links to the resources to grab all this stuff. And then any of the other important extra little details. So if you see the slide deck later, it'll have it. All right. So yeah, we did that. Yeah, 761, 301. Then the update. Add the tunnel, TCP, and they talked about seed and no seeds. Enter your nodes. Yeah, enable your printers. And then there was the PySCSI stuff, and that was actually kind of cool since Captain's Quarters does run the latest version that I compiled for him. Yeah. Then questions, answers, confusions, resources, and finally, there's kind of everything you need. The A2 Server RTG was the release I did last year. It will work just fine, but it doesn't have some of the Macintosh folder privileges and the special like the file, the folder views, state saving, and that kind of stuff in it. But that's it. Thank you. Sure.
Two brief questions. So, first of all, I anticipate that this is assuming static IP, and it would be annoying to request, multiple all the time.
Yes. Static IP to an extent. Once you have access to the Google Doc, you can update your own endpoint information, which is easy. But what I found is that not everybody checks it and updates it back. I'm running on the Frontier gig fiber, but when we lost power here in Texas 4 or 5 times in the area, I got several different IPs coming in when the systems came back up for my head-end router. But you just have to catch it and push it in. But by the way this works, as long as you have enough endpoints out from your list that are still there, you'll have at least some zones reporting.
And then, on the Macintosh, I saw people printing to like receipt style printers. What are those?
Okay, so the receipt style printers are mainly going to be part of that cup system auto add-on, to where you have a Linux box and you define the printer on the Linux side, and then use the Appletalk software to auto bind as a virtual laser writer. And then what happens is Cups actually just does magic with GhostScript and turns that PDF file into something that pretty much whatever your Linux printer supports just works with. It's really kind of freaky to see it work the first time.
What would be an example brand of one of those like receipt style?
Honestly, I haven't used one in a long time, but I know Seiko made a few. Seiko and Epson. I think what was the barcode manufacturers? I forget who makes the wands, but they have a few that you can add on. And generally, they're just all serial printers. So you set them up as a serial printer in Linux and find out what they support. Most of them actually still support the IBM graphics modes, the ESC P2s. So it's just like adding a regular printer. It just has tighter margins and a different scaling factor. And that's where GhostScript comes in handy, because it'll automatically figure that out. Yeah, it's like, and just like with this system, when I brought up my first Appletalk server, it went out and auto bound our office jet down in our kitchen, and then all of a sudden we just print to it in color, and from the laser writer, and it just worked. I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. I didn't have to mess with the drivers or anything; it just worked. One of the other latest things coming along is that there is a GhostScript and Cups driver combination that's actually will be released very shortly, as soon as we finish the QA on it, for the ImageWriter 2 printer. So you can stick an ImageWriter 2 printer on a Linux box and then just print to it in color, if you have the color ribbon, from basically anything, which you really couldn't do on like a Windows box before or anything like that. So that'll be fun when we get that finished. And there's some custom dithering and stuff that GhostScript does for us that actually the output looks better than it should. Yeah.
So I've actually got like two questions,
Sure.
kind of sort of related about the same thing. The first one is there any way to do this without requiring a static IP? Like, is it possible to do any, DNSing or NATing or something like that to kind of get around that?
Yeah. The easiest. Okay. So for people coming to you, you can, when you register, use a DNS, like a dynamic DNS that's out there. For mine, my official registration is the petarsplace.ddns.net, because I used the noip.com or whatever it is. And then I just update that IP address. So if they put you into the internet router via host name, then you're fine. That'll always be, every time they reboot, they'll pick up the new one. If you register yourself by IP, then yeah, you're going to have to change it yourself and then hope other people find it. So yeah, so you can use dynamic, because it works.
Okay. So my other question was, are there any network games that work over long distance, or are they all kind of lockstep expecting a lower latency?
I haven't played them because I haven't had really a chance to do it, but Spectre is supposed to be pretty good. And then Bolo, NetTrek, the really old school ones, they seem to work just fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know of any newer style ones that would require the real low latency that would even work across Appletalk. All right. Anybody else? If not, thank you.
Thank you.